If you've picked up this book, chances are you're tired of waiting for the perfect moment to pursue what matters most to you. I wrote, "Be it before you feel it," because I've witnessed too many capable people, entrepreneurs, leaders, and ambitious individuals get trapped in the preparation phase. They research endlessly, plan meticulously, and wait for that elusive feeling of readiness that never quite arrives. Confidence doesn't precede action, it follows it. The identity you want to embody isn't something you wait to feel. It's something you practice into existence through deliberate, consistent behaviors. This book is built around a simple but powerful premise. Small, strategic actions compound into transformative momentum when aligned with who you're becoming, not just what you're trying to achieve. Throughout these pages, you'll discover the identity-first frameworks that separate those who consistently execute from those who perpetually prepare. You'll learn why acting before you feel ready isn't just acceptable, it's the only reliable path to breakthrough results. And you'll walk away with practical systems that make progress feel automatic rather than forced. This isn't about hustling harder or pushing through resistance. It's about understanding how top performers think and operate, then installing those same patterns into your own decision-making process. Whether you're scaling a business, advancing your career, or pursuing any meaningful goal, the principles in this book will help you move from waiting to creating, starting exactly where you are with exactly what you have. Your future self is counting on the actions you take today. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Act first. Your heart pounds at 3 a.m. Every missed opportunity replays like a broken record. You've planned the perfect launch, mapped the ideal strategy, researched every angle, yet nothing ships. The cursor blinks on an empty document while your competitors build empires with good enough execution. You're trapped in the readiness mirage, waiting for a feeling that never comes. This chapter destroys that trap. You'll discover why top performers act from standards, not moods, and how feelings follow actions, never the other way around. By the end, you'll have concrete tools to ship before you feel sure, plus a roadmap to transform sporadic effort into compounding momentum. The readiness trap that's killing your progress. The biggest lie in personal development: wait until you feel ready. You wait for motivation. Motivation waits for movement. This creates a deadlock that can last years. Consider this. How many times have you felt ready to tackle something difficult? Probably never. Yet you've accomplished hard things anyway, when circumstances forced action or deadlines demanded delivery. Mood volatility blocks consistent output and delays skill acquisition. One day you're fired up, shipping content and making calls. The next day, energy crashes and nothing moves. This emotional roller coaster makes it impossible to build momentum or develop mastery. Skills require repetition. Repetition requires consistency. Consistency dies when feelings drive the calendar. Overplanning feels productive but produces no proof. You research competitors, refine strategies, and perfect presentations, all while generating zero evidence that you can execute. Planning addiction is procrastination in disguise. It protects your ego from market feedback while ensuring you never get the reps needed to improve. The identity stall compounds the problem. No consistent actions means no evidence. No evidence means fragile self-belief. You start defining yourself by intentions rather than delivery. I'm someone who wants to build a business instead of I'm someone who ships weekly. This identity drift becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. You outsource identity to feelings and feedback. When energy is high, you feel capable. When energy dips, you question everything. External validation becomes your confidence source, a dangerous dependency that keeps you reactive instead of proactive. You measure by intention, not delivery, which creates an illusion of progress without actual movement. The compound cost of delay. Every day you wait, the cost multiplies. Lost opportunities and compounding time work against you. Your calendar fills with low-leverage work, busy tasks that feel important but build nothing lasting. Meanwhile, competitors with cleaner standards outship and outposition you. Consider Jeff Bezos, who built Amazon on day one thinking, He didn't wait for perfect market conditions or complete certainty. He established customer-obsessed identity early and let public principles force consistent long-term bets. The result? A compounding flywheel of execution that competitors couldn't match. Confidence erodes when action stalls. Decisions slow because you second-guess everything. Stress rises as the gap between intention and reality widens. Teams lose faith when leaders can't deliver predictably. Partners stop betting on you when promises don't convert to results. This creates a vicious cycle. Delay breeds doubt. Doubt breeds more delay. 5 years pass with nothing to show but plans. You become the person who was going to instead of the person who did. The winner's advantage: standards over moods. Winners ship before shore. They measure by behaviors, not feelings. They understand that confidence is earned through kept promises, not positive thinking. Take Kobe Bryant's Mamba persona. This wasn't just branding, it was identity-based behavior change. The Mamba identity defined training standards: 4 a.m. workouts, relentless skill repetition, obsessive preparation. Action shaped belief, not the other way around. Early mornings and countless reps created the evidence that supported elite-level confidence. Winners seek disconfirming feedback and adjust fast. They ship imperfect work to get market data, then iterate based on reality rather than assumptions. They turn fear into first steps, using anxiety as a signal to act, not avoid. Losers wait for confidence and hide in research. They confuse busyness with progress, filling time with preparation that never leads to execution. They protect ego by avoiding public deadlines, which ensures they never build the reputation that creates opportunities. Lady Gaga exemplifies winner thinking. She crafted a bold identity early in her career and matched her behavior to it both on stage and off. Public commitments to creative risk forced her to deliver consistently, building a global brand through repeated acts of artistic courage. Your 3-hour transformation. This book delivers concrete results fast. By the end of this book, you'll have a one-sentence identity statement that defines who you're becoming. Not vague aspirations, observable behaviors tied to specific cadences. I am a calm, decisive builder who ships one public deliverable daily. 3 daily standards tied to visible outputs. These become your non-negotiables, the behaviors that prove your identity regardless of mood or circumstance. 1 scary micro-deliverable shipped, something that makes you slightly uncomfortable but demonstrates forward movement. This creates the first piece of evidence in your new identity story. You'll also install systems that run automatically. 2 if-then action plans that fire without conscious decision. These remove friction from important behaviors and protect execution during low-energy periods. 1 minimum viable action per priority project. These 2-minute starts eliminate the activation energy that kills momentum before it begins. A public scoreboard with weekly review ritual. Visibility creates accountability. Reviews lock in learning and course correct quickly. The 8-step transformation spine. This book follows a specific sequence designed to maximize results. Identity switch defines who you are becoming. Direction precedes speed, otherwise you scale chaos. Identity creates standards. Standards create consistency. Future you scripts vivid finish line behaviors and constraints. This becomes your decision filter, helping you protect long-term assets while avoiding shiny object syndrome. Close gaps maps ideal versus actual behavior, then picks one lever to attack. This converts shame into strategy and ensures progress is measurable. Dissonance drive uses public commitments to force alignment. When words and actions clash, the mind seeks harmony, usually by adjusting behavior to match stated intentions. Tiny starts shrinks the first move to 2 minutes. This removes the activation energy that kills most projects before they begin. Action triggers creates if-then plans linked to daily cues. Pre-decisions reduce cognitive load and protect execution under stress. Design defaults reduces friction for desired behaviors while adding friction to distractions. Environment beats willpower every time. Keep Becoming establishes cadence, reviews, and compounding mechanisms. This locks in the flywheel so results multiply with less effort over time. The The sequence matters. Identity before tactics prevents you from optimizing the wrong behaviors. Friction reduction before force multiplication ensures your systems are sustainable. Cadence before ambition builds the foundation that supports bigger bets later. The science behind the promise. 3 principles underpin everything in this book. Identity-based behavior, who you believe you are, drives what you do. Change the behaviors consistently, and identity updates to match. Your brain infers beliefs about who I am from repeated, observable actions. Self-perception and self-signaling. Each action broadcasts to your subconscious who you are. Behavior is the broadcast. Identity is the receiver. Ship daily for 2 weeks, and you start believing, I'm someone who ships daily. Behavioral activation. Mood follows movement, not the other way around. Taking a small, value-consistent step reduces uncertainty, interrupts rumination, and makes the next step easier. Action creates the emotional state you thought you needed to begin. Together, these explain why Act First is the shortest route to stable confidence and compounding results. Real-world proof. The evidence is overwhelming. 70% of small businesses with documented processes grow faster and more profitably. 1 in 3 solopreneurs now break 6 figures annually through leveraged systems. Teams receiving leadership training report 25% higher engagement. But the most compelling proof comes from individual transformations. Consider any entrepreneur who built lasting success. They all share one trait. They shipped before they felt ready. They used action to build confidence rather than waiting for confidence to enable action. The path forward is clear. Stop waiting for the perfect moment, the complete plan, or the confident feeling. Start with identity, add systems, and let momentum build naturally. Your competitors are shipping while you're planning. Your future self is counting on decisions you make today. The gap between where you are and where you want to be closes one action at a time, but only if you take the first step. The next chapter reveals something most builders never discover: how a single sentence can transform your entire approach to consistency. But first, you need to make one choice. Will you keep waiting, or will you start becoming? Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Identity Switch. Muhammad Ali declared, "I am the greatest," long before he had titles to prove it. The boxing world laughed. Critics called it arrogance. But Ali understood something most people miss. Identity doesn't follow achievement, it creates it. 3 years before his first heavyweight championship, Ali was already training like the greatest, speaking like the greatest, and carrying himself like the greatest. His identity statement wasn't a prediction, it was a blueprint. Every training session, every interview, every public appearance reinforced the same message to his own brain: this is who I am. The result? His training and tactics aligned to prove it. He developed the footwork, the speed, the psychological warfare that matched his declared identity. When he finally won the title, it felt inevitable. Not because he got lucky, but because he'd been living as the champion long before the belt arrived. This is the power of the identity switch. It's not positive thinking or fake it till you make it nonsense. It's a precise rewiring of your behavioral operating system that makes consistency feel automatic instead of forced. The hidden force that drives every decision. Most people think identity is something you discover. They wait for clarity about who they really are before committing to any path. This backwards thinking keeps them stuck in analysis paralysis, while competitors with clearer self-definitions sprint ahead. Here's what actually happens. Your brain constantly observes your behavior and draws conclusions about who you are. Every action sends a signal to your subconscious. Ship content daily for 2 weeks, and your brain starts believing, I'm someone who ships daily. Miss deadlines repeatedly, and it concludes, I'm unreliable. This process happens whether you're conscious of it or not. The question isn't whether you're building an identity. You're always building one. The question is whether you're building it deliberately or by accident. Labels steer choices in ways that feel effortless. When someone asks you to skip your workout, your response depends entirely on how you see yourself. If your identity is, "I'm trying to get in shape," you'll negotiate. If your identity is, "I'm an athlete," the answer is automatic. Athletes don't skip training. Identity cuts decision time and emotional noise. Instead of debating whether to write today, whether to make that call, whether to ship that post, you simply ask, "What would someone with my identity do?" The answer appears instantly, bypassing the mental loops that kill momentum. This is why consistency becomes default instead of effort. You're not forcing yourself to act against your nature. You're acting in perfect alignment with who you believe you are. The competitive edge hidden in plain sight. Clear identity creates clear positioning in the marketplace. When you know exactly who you are and what you stand for, your messaging becomes sharp, your decisions become fast, and your reputation becomes predictable. Teams and partners trust predictable standards. They know what to expect from you because your identity creates non-negotiable behaviors. This reliability becomes a competitive advantage that compounds over time. Consider Beyoncé's Sasha Fierce persona. This wasn't just a stage name, it was a deliberate identity switch that enabled bolder performance behaviors. When she stepped into that identity, her rehearsal standards matched the persona. The result was consistent world-class execution that separated her from performers who relied on mood and inspiration. Reputation compounds because delivery becomes reliable. People start describing you using your identity words. She always ships on time. He never misses a deadline. They're the ones who actually do what they say. This reputation creates opportunities that aren't available to inconsistent performers. But here's where most people go wrong. They try to build identity around vague virtues instead of observable actions. The fatal flaw in most identity work. The biggest myth in personal development is find your passion first. This advice keeps people searching for some mystical calling instead of building competence through consistent action. The reality is simpler and more empowering. Passion follows proof and progress. You don't need to love something to get good at it. You need to get good at it to love it. Competence creates confidence. Confidence creates enjoyment, and enjoyment feels like passion. But it all starts with action, not feeling. The second myth is identity is fixed. People think they're just not a morning person, or not good with technology, or not a natural leader. This fixed mindset becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that limits growth. The truth is that identity is a behavior-weighted average. You become what you repeatedly do. Change the behaviors consistently, and identity updates to match. Your brain has no choice but to conclude that someone who ships daily is a shipper. Someone who leads weekly meetings is a leader. Someone who wakes up early is a morning person. The third myth is confidence must come first. This creates an impossible chicken and egg problem. You need confidence to act, but you need action to build confidence. The solution is to skip the confidence requirement entirely and build it through kept promises to yourself. Confidence is earned, not given. Every time you do what you said you'd do, you make a deposit in your self-trust account. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you make a withdrawal. The balance determines how confident you feel about future commitments. The one-sentence identity revolution. The identity switch starts with a single sentence that defines who you are and how you behave. This isn't a mission statement or a vision board. It's a behavioral contract with yourself. The template is simple. I am a role who observable behavior every cadence. The power is in the specificity. Vague identities create vague results. Precise identities create precise behaviors. I am a calm, decisive builder who ships one public deliverable daily. This sentence contains everything needed to drive consistent action. A clear role, builder, a behavioral standard, ships daily, and a quality marker, calm, decisive, that influences how the behavior gets executed. The test for any identity statement is simple. Could a camera verify it? If your identity includes words like passionate, creative, or authentic, you're in trouble. These adjectives can't be measured, which means they can't drive behavior. Instead, focus on verbs. Ships daily beats disciplined. Responds within 24 hours beats reliable. Reviews weekly beats organized. Verbs create action. Adjectives create confusion. Once you have your identity line, you need 3 standards that prove it daily. These become your non-negotiables, the behaviors that happen regardless of mood, energy, or circumstances. The first standard should be an output standard. This is your daily proof of progress. 1 post published, 1 call made, 1 page written. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be public and consistent. The second standard should be a process standard. This is your weekly or monthly review ritual that locks in learning and course corrects quickly. Without this, you'll drift away from your identity over time. The third standard should be an integrity standard. This protects your time and attention, honoring calendar blocks, responding to messages within a set time frame, or maintaining boundaries around deep work. Making it real through visibility. Standards without visibility are just good intentions. You need 2 public signals that make your identity impossible to ignore. The first signal is a public scoreboard. This could be a shared document, a wall chart, or a social media update, anything that makes your progress visible to at least one other person. The format doesn't matter, the visibility does. The second signal is an accountability partner or group. This isn't someone who nags you about your goals. It's someone who witnesses your identity in action and reflects it back to you. They see you as the person you're becoming, not the person you used to be. 1 person who sees your score beats 10 who don't. The magic isn't in the audience size, it's in the commitment to transparency. When you know someone is watching, your behavior naturally aligns with your stated identity. Start with a 7-day sprint. Keep your 3 standards for 1 week and log evidence daily. At the end of the week, spend 10 minutes reviewing your identity statement. Does it match the reality you want to keep? Adjust the wording if needed, but don't lower the standards. Raise your execution. The goal isn't perfection, it's proof. Each day you meet your standards, you're sending a signal to your brain. This is who I am. Each day you miss, you're sending the opposite signal. The brain doesn't judge, it just records and adjusts your self-image accordingly. The transformation timeline. Most people expect identity change to take months or years. The reality is much faster and more dramatic. After 1 week of consistent standards, you'll have a written identity and clear proof of progress. This is good. You've broken the cycle of intention without action. After 2 weeks, you'll notice something interesting. The standards start feeling normal instead of forced. You'll have sustained at least 1 public signal, and people will start noticing your consistency. This is excellent. You're building momentum. After 8 weeks, something remarkable happens. The standards feel automatic, and others start describing you using your identity words. You've successfully switched from trying to be someone to actually being someone. This is the best outcome. You've rewired your behavioral operating system. But the process isn't always smooth. 3 things commonly go wrong, and each has a simple fix. When identity meets reality. The first problem is overbroad identity. People try to be everything to everyone. I am a creative, analytical, strategic, detail-oriented leader who ships daily, responds instantly, and reviews constantly. This creates decision paralysis instead of decision clarity. The fix is constraint. 1 role, 3 behaviors, maximum. If you can't explain your identity in 1 breath, it's too complex. The second problem is hidden standards. People set private goals and wonder why they lack motivation. Without visibility, there's no accountability, and without accountability, there's no pressure to perform. The fix is publication. Put your scoreboard somewhere others can see it, and invite at least 1 person to review your progress weekly. The third problem is identity environment clash. You declare yourself a focused, deep worker while keeping your phone on your desk and your email notifications active. Your environment sabotages your identity before it can take root. The fix requires 2 adjustments. Smaller standards that fit your current environment and environmental changes that support your desired identity. We'll explore this deeper in later chapters, but for now, remember that identity and environment must align. The ripple effect. When you successfully switch your identity, the changes extend far beyond personal productivity. Your relationships improve because people can predict and trust your behavior. Your professional reputation strengthens because consistency becomes your calling card. Your stress decreases because decisions become automatic instead of agonizing. Most importantly, you stop being someone who wants to and become someone who does. This shift in self-perception unlocks opportunities that aren't available to inconsistent performers. The identity switch is just the beginning. Once you know who you are, you need to know where you're going. The next chapter reveals a technique that turns vague future dreams into precise present decisions, but only if you're willing to confront the gap between who you are today and who you could become 12 months from now. Chapter 3, Future You. Serena Williams won her first Grand Slam at 17. But here's what most people don't know. She was already training like a champion at age 4. Not because she was naturally gifted, though she was, but because she and her father had a vivid picture of exactly who she would become. Richard Williams didn't just dream about his daughter's success. He wrote a detailed plan before Serena was born, mapping out her training schedule, her mindset, her daily routines, and even her media interactions. This wasn't wishful thinking, it was behavioral architecture. Every practice session, every tournament, every decision was filtered through one question: does this serve the champion Serena will become? The result? Behaviors matched champion identity long before trophies stacked. Constraints protected recovery and focus when others burned out. The outcome was longevity and dominance that spanned decades because present-day Serena was always making choices to protect future Serena's assets. This is the power of future you thinking. It's not visualization or goal setting. It's decision-making from the perspective of who you're becoming, not who you are today. The invisible force behind every great decision. Most people make choices based on how they feel right now. Tired? Skip the workout. Stressed? Order takeout. Overwhelmed? Say yes to the easy project and no to the challenging one. This present bias thinking keeps you trapped in cycles that feel good today but cost you tomorrow. Future you thinking flips this script entirely. Instead of asking, what do I want right now, you ask, what would the person I'm becoming choose? This simple shift transforms impulsive reactions into strategic decisions. When you feel connected to your future self, present bias loses its grip. You start protecting long-term assets, reputation, relationships, skills, capital, instead of chasing short-term comfort. The immediate gratification that used to derail your progress becomes less appealing because you can see the real cost. It's stealing from someone you care about. You. Trade-offs get cleaner when you have a clear picture of where you're heading. Should you take that high-paying but soul-crushing client? Easy decision when you know future you values creative freedom over quick cash. Should you invest time learning a new skill? Obvious choice when you see how it compounds in your future avatar's daily routine. The guilt that usually accompanies difficult decisions starts to fade. You're not depriving present you of pleasure, you're investing in future you's success. This reframe transforms sacrifice into strategy. The strategic clarity that changes everything. A vivid future avatar becomes a filter for every opportunity that crosses your path. Instead of evaluating each option in isolation, you run it through a simple test. Does this move me closer to or further from who I'm becoming? This filter helps you stop chasing mismatched opportunities. That speaking gig might pay well, but if your future self is known for deep, thoughtful work rather than surface-level presentations, it's a distraction disguised as progress. That networking event might seem important, but if your avatar thrives on focused creation time, it's a net negative. Energy centralizes on compounding moves when you have clear direction. Instead of spreading effort across dozens of good opportunities, you concentrate on the few that build toward your specific future. This focus creates momentum that multiplies over time. But here's where most future thinking goes wrong. People create fantasy versions of themselves instead of realistic upgrades. The avatar that actually works. The secret isn't in dreaming bigger, it's in thinking more specifically. Your future self isn't a superhuman version of who you are today. It's a refined, focused, systematized version that has eliminated the behaviors holding you back and amplified the ones moving you forward. The avatar starts with a detailed day-in-the-life narrative written in present tense. Not "I will wake up early," but "I wake up at 5:30 a.m. and immediately review my 3 priorities for the day." Not "I'll be more organized," but "I spend the first 10 minutes of each work block clearing my desk and opening only the files I need for that session." This isn't about perfection, it's about precision. The more specific your future avatar, the more useful it becomes as a decision-making tool. Vague futures create vague choices. Detailed futures create clear action. The avatar includes morning routines, work cadences, relationship boundaries, recovery practices, and most importantly, constraints. What your future self refuses to do is as important as what they commit to doing. "I never check email before completing my first creative block" is more powerful than "I'm disciplined with my time." You need 2 types of budgets built into this avatar: time and energy. Your future self has learned to protect high-focus slots for creation and strategy while batching low-energy tasks into designated windows. They've stopped pretending all hours are equal and started designing their schedule around their natural rhythms. These budgets become non-negotiable constraints that protect your most valuable assets. When someone asks for a meeting during your deep work time, the answer is automatic. "That doesn't work for my schedule. Here are 3 alternatives." No guilt, no explanation needed. You're simply protecting future you's success. The 5-question filter. Once you have a clear avatar, you need a simple way to evaluate daily decisions. This is where the approval tests come in. 5 yes or no questions that help you choose like your future self would choose. The first test is return on investment of time. Will this activity generate more value than it consumes? Your future self has learned to calculate the true cost of opportunities, including setup time, follow-up requirements, and opportunity cost. The second test is brand alignment. Does this opportunity reinforce the reputation you're building or dilute it? Your future avatar has a clear positioning in the market and protects it fiercely. The third test is energy match. Does this work energize you or drain you? Your future self has identified their zone of genius and spends most of their time there. The fourth test is relationship impact. Will this strengthen the connections that matter most or create obligations with people who don't share your values? Your future avatar has learned that your network determines your net worth and your stress level. The fifth test is downside risk. What's the worst-case scenario, and can you handle it without derailing your long-term plan? Your future self takes calculated risks, but never bets the farm on uncertain outcomes. Each test gets a simple yes or no answer. No maybes, no it depends, no complex scoring systems. If an opportunity doesn't pass at least 4 of the 5 tests, it's automatically declined. This removes the emotional negotiation that usually leads to poor choices. The weekly reality check. The avatar only works if it stays connected to reality. This requires a weekly continuity ritual that keeps your future vision sharp and relevant. Start by reading your avatar description out loud. Does it still feel authentic and achievable? Has your understanding of who you're becoming evolved? Adjust one line if needed, but resist the urge to completely rewrite it every week. Consistency in vision creates consistency in action. Next, score the past week against your 5 approval tests. How many decisions aligned with your future self's priorities? Where did you compromise, and why? This isn't about judgment, it's about pattern recognition. You're looking for the situations where present bias tends to win so you can design better systems. Finally, choose one behavior to upgrade next week. Maybe your avatar handles email more efficiently, or protects their creative time more fiercely, or says no more gracefully. Pick one specific improvement and focus on it for 7 days. This weekly review prevents avatar drift, the gradual disconnection between your future vision and your present choices. Without regular recalibration, even the most vivid future self becomes irrelevant to daily decisions. The common traps that kill future thinking. The first trap is fantasy creep. People create avatars that sound impressive but aren't grounded in reality. I wake up at 4 a.m., meditate for an hour, work out for 90 minutes, then create for 6 straight hours without breaks. This isn't an avatar. It's a superhero fantasy that sets you up for failure. The fix is replacing adjectives with behaviors and anchoring everything to metrics. Instead of, "I'm incredibly productive," write, "I ship one substantial deliverable every Tuesday and Friday." Instead of, "I'm amazingly focused," write, "I work in 90-minute blocks with 15-minute breaks and never check messages during focus time." The second trap is avatar environment mismatch. You design a future self that requires complete life reorganization while keeping all your current commitments and constraints. This creates immediate conflict between vision and reality. The fix requires 2 adjustments: subtracting conflicting commitments from your current life and reordering your calendar to support your future identity. You can't add a new self without removing the old patterns that created your current results. The third trap is stale avatar syndrome. You write a detailed future vision once and never update it. Over time, it becomes disconnected from your evolving understanding of what you actually want and what's actually possible. The fix is a monthly 15-minute rewrite session. Keep the core identity and values, but refresh the specific behaviors and constraints based on what you've learned. Your avatar should evolve as you do, staying just ahead of your current reality without becoming pure fantasy. The transformation timeline. The progression from fuzzy future thinking to precise decision-making happens in predictable stages. After 1 week of avatar work, you'll have a vivid future vision, 5 decision tests, and 2 identity budgets. This is good. You've created the infrastructure for better choices. After 4 weeks of weekly scoring, you'll notice fewer impulse decisions and more strategic ones. Your approval test average will climb above 3 out of 5 as you get better at recognizing misaligned opportunities. This is excellent. You're building the habit of future-focused thinking. After 3 months, something remarkable happens. Your quarterly metrics align with your avatar's priorities. Revenue per hour increases by at least 25% because you're focusing on higher leverage activities. Reactive work decreases by at least 30% because you're better at saying no. You'll have at least 2 examples of big opportunities you declined to protect your plan. This is the best outcome. You've successfully rewired your decision-making process. The ripple effect of future focus. When you consistently make choices from your future self's perspective, the changes compound in unexpected ways. Your reputation becomes more focused and valuable because you stop diluting your brand with mismatched activities. Your relationships improve because you're more intentional about where you invest time and attention. Your stress decreases because you're no longer constantly second-guessing your choices. Most importantly, you develop what psychologists call future self-continuity, the feeling that tomorrow's you is as real and important as today's you. This emotional connection transforms abstract goals into personal commitments. You're not just trying to achieve something, you're trying to become someone. The avatar gives you a North Star for navigation, but it doesn't tell you how to close the gap between where you are and where you're going. The next chapter reveals a systematic approach to mapping that gap and converting the discomfort of discrepancy into the fuel for rapid change, but only if you're ready to face the truth about where you actually stand today. Chapter 4: Close Gaps. When Satya Nadella became CEO of Microsoft in 2014, the company was dying. Not financially, they still had billions in revenue, but culturally. The organization had become a know-it-all culture where being right mattered more than learning, where internal competition killed collaboration, and where innovation had slowed to a crawl. Nadella could have launched a massive transformation initiative with consultants, workshops, and motivational speeches. Instead, he did something simpler and more powerful. He named the gap. We need to move from a know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all culture. One sentence that captured the exact distance between where Microsoft was and where it needed to be. But naming the gap was just the beginning. The real work happened in the systematic closing of that gap through specific rituals, language changes, and measurement systems. Leaders started saying, "I don't know, let's figure it out," instead of pretending to have all the answers. Teams began celebrating learning from failures instead of hiding them. Reviews focused on growth and curiosity instead of just results. The outcome? Renewed innovation and execution tempo that transformed Microsoft from a declining giant into one of the world's most valuable companies. The gap became the roadmap. This is the power of gap-closing thinking. It's not about motivation or inspiration. It's about measurement and systematic progress. The hidden energy source in every struggle. Most people experience the gap between where they are and where they want to be as pure pain. They feel shame about their current reality, frustration about their slow progress, and anxiety about whether they'll ever reach their goals. This emotional turbulence becomes a reason to avoid looking at the gap altogether. But here's what the highest performers understand. The gap isn't judgment, it's data. The discomfort you feel when comparing your ideal standards to your current behavior isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's motivational energy waiting to be harnessed. Psychologists call this self-discrepancy theory. When there's a mismatch between your actual self and your ideal self, it creates psychological tension. Without structure, that tension becomes avoidance, procrastination, and eventually resignation. With structure, it becomes the most reliable fuel for rapid change. The key is treating the gap as information rather than indictment. Your current response time isn't terrible. It's currently 48 hours, target 24 hours. Your shipping frequency isn't pathetic. It's currently twice per month, target twice per week. This shift from emotional language to behavioral language transforms shame into strategy. Narrow focus increases velocity dramatically. When you try to close multiple gaps simultaneously, your attention gets diluted and progress slows. When you attack one gap with laser focus, you can measure movement daily and adjust tactics quickly. The compound effect of concentrated effort beats scattered improvement attempts every time. Visible progress sustains motivation better than any external reward system. Each time you close a gap slightly, even by 10 or 20%, your brain releases dopamine and reinforces the behavior. This creates an upward spiral where progress generates energy for more progress. The professional advantage of gap mastery. Clients and teams trust builders who close gaps fast. When you can identify a discrepancy and systematically eliminate it, you become the person others turn to when something needs fixing. This reputation for gap closing becomes a competitive advantage that compounds over time. Your professional credibility rises when you turn problems into plans. Instead of complaining about what's not working or making excuses for poor performance, you map the distance between current and desired state, then execute a systematic approach to close it. This problem-solving capability becomes your signature strength. Consider how this plays out in real scenarios. Your team misses deadlines consistently. Instead of lecturing about accountability or implementing complex project management systems, you map the gap. Current average delivery time is 14 days past deadline. Target is on-time delivery. Then you identify the smallest lever that moves the needle. Daily 10-minute check-ins to surface blockers early. The gap becomes your guide for where to apply effort, and the systematic approach ensures that effort translates into measurable results. The 3-column truth map. The gap-closing process starts with brutal honesty about where you actually stand versus where you want to be. This requires a simple 3-column map that strips away the stories you tell yourself and focuses on observable reality. The first column captures your ideal standard, not your ultimate fantasy, but the specific behavior that would prove you're operating at the level you want to reach. Respond to all messages within 24 hours. Ship one substantial piece of content every Tuesday and Friday. Complete weekly reviews every Sunday by 6 p.m. The second column records your current behavior with verifiable evidence, not your general sense of how you're doing, but actual data from the past 2 weeks. Current average response time, 3.2 days based on last 20 messages. Shipped content twice in the past month, both late. Completed 1 out of 4 weekly reviews in November. The third column identifies the first lever, the smallest action that would move you closer to your ideal standard. Not the complete solution, but the next logical step that you could implement immediately. Check messages at 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. daily. Write 3 bullet points every Monday morning. Set Sunday 5 p.m. calendar reminder with 30-minute block. 1 gap per line keeps the focus sharp. The temptation is to create a comprehensive improvement plan that addresses everything at once. This guarantees overwhelm and ensures nothing gets fixed. Instead, you pick 1 gap and attack it with concentrated effort for 2 weeks. The daily 3-line log tracks movement in real time. Each evening, you record what action you took, what evidence you created, and what the next lever should be. This creates a feedback loop that's tight enough to course correct quickly, but simple enough to maintain consistently. The 14-day sprint method. 2 weeks is the perfect time frame for gap-closing sprints. It's long enough to establish a pattern and see measurable progress, but short enough to maintain intensity and focus. Longer time frames lead to drift. Shorter ones don't allow enough data to accumulate. You start by defining the daily action that will close your chosen gap. This isn't a vague commitment to be better, but a specific behavior you can execute regardless of mood or circumstances. Send 1 follow-up email by 11 a.m. Write for 25 minutes immediately after morning coffee. Review tomorrow's priorities before closing laptop. The action goes on your public scoreboard where at least one other person can see your progress. This visibility creates healthy pressure and makes it harder to rationalize skipping days. You also tell one person about your specific commitment, creating social accountability that reinforces your internal motivation. Each day ends with a 3-line log entry: what you did, what evidence you created, and what adjustment you'll make tomorrow. This isn't journaling about your feelings, it's data collection about your behavior. Sent follow-up email at 10:45 a.m., screenshot saved. Tomorrow we'll prepare template night before to reduce friction. The weekly review happens every 7 days for 20 minutes. You measure progress in behaviors, not opinions. How many days did you hit your target? What patterns emerge from your evidence? Where did the system break down and why? If you're stalled, you have the lever. If your target was 1 email per day and you only hit it twice, the new target becomes 1 email every other day. If you're cruising and hitting your target consistently, you stack 1 more behavior onto the routine. At the end of 14 days, you choose: extend this gap for another week if you're still building momentum, or move to the next gap if you've established a sustainable pattern. The evidence-based approach. The difference between gap closing that works and gap closing that fails is evidence. Successful gap closers track verifiable proof of progress, links to published content, timestamps on sent messages, screenshots of completed tasks, URLs of shipped products. This evidence serves 2 purposes. First, it eliminates the self-deception that kills most improvement efforts. You can't pretend you're making progress when the data shows otherwise. Second, it provides positive reinforcement when you are making progress, creating the emotional fuel to continue. Making gaps public rather than personal removes the shame that usually accompanies honest self-assessment. When you share your gap map with others, you're not confessing personal failures, you're presenting a professional development plan. This reframe makes it easier to be honest about current reality and more likely to follow through on improvement commitments. Naming the anti-goal clarifies the minimum acceptable standard. No 0 ship days is more motivating than ship more content. Never miss the 24-hour response window is clearer than be more responsive. The anti-goal creates a bright line that's easy to recognize and hard to rationalize crossing. The common traps that kill progress. The first trap is shame spirals. People look at their gaps and conclude they're fundamentally flawed rather than temporarily behind. This emotional reaction makes them want to hide from the data rather than use it for improvement. The fix is switching to behavior language and removing all adjectives from your gap analysis. You're not lazy or disorganized or unreliable. You're someone whose current response time is longer than desired, whose shipping frequency is lower than optimal, whose review cadence is less consistent than needed. Behavior can be changed. Character judgments create resistance. The second trap is trying to close too many gaps simultaneously. People create comprehensive improvement plans that address every area where they're falling short. This dilutes focus and guarantees that nothing gets the concentrated attention needed for real change. The fix is a hard rule: one gap at a time, maximum. Park the other gaps in a backlog and resist the urge to work on them until you've made substantial progress on your primary target. Dilution kills speed. Concentration creates breakthroughs. The third trap is invisible levers. People choose improvement actions that can't be measured or verified. Be more proactive, or communicate better, or stay focused aren't levers, they're wishes. The fix is making every lever concrete and observable. Send one pitch email by 11 a.m. every Tuesday can be verified. Spend 90 minutes on deep work before checking messages can be timed and logged. Complete weekly review by Sunday 6 p.m. can be calendared and tracked. The fourth trap is review drift. People start strong with daily logging and weekly reviews, then gradually skip them as the novelty wears off. Without consistent measurement, progress stalls and old patterns return. The fix is calendaring a recurring 20-minute review and doing it even when you don't need it. The review isn't just about measuring progress. It's about maintaining the habit of systematic improvement that will serve you for years. The transformation timeline. Gap closing results follow a predictable pattern when done correctly. After 14 days of focused effort on one gap, you should see 10 to 20% improvement in your target behavior. This is good. You've proven the system works and built confidence in your ability to change. After 2 complete gap closing cycles, you'll have measurable behavior change in at least 2 areas: 10 consecutive shipping days, response time consistently under 24 hours, or weekly reviews completed on schedule. This is excellent. You've developed the skill of systematic improvement. After 3 months of rolling gap closing cycles, something remarkable happens. Your quarterly review shows at least 30% improvement across 3 different standards. More importantly, you've developed the identity of someone who closes gaps quickly and systematically. This is the best outcome. You've become the type of person who turns problems into progress. The compound effect of systematic improvement. When you master the art of gap closing, the benefits extend far beyond the specific behaviors you improve. You develop confidence in your ability to change anything that's not working. You become known as someone who follows through on improvement commitments. You build the systematic thinking skills that accelerate all future learning. Most importantly, you stop being someone who tolerates gaps between intention and execution. You become someone who measures, adjusts, and improves continuously. This identity shift transforms how you approach every challenge and opportunity. The gap closing process gives you the systematic approach to improvement, but it doesn't solve the motivation problem that derails most change efforts. The next chapter reveals a psychological mechanism that makes quitting harder than continuing, but only if you're willing to put your reputation on the line in a very specific way. Chapter 5: Dissonance Drive. Elon Musk has a dangerous habit. He makes impossible promises in public. In 2018, he declared Tesla would produce 5,000 Model 3 cars per week by the end of June. Industry experts laughed. Tesla was struggling to hit 2,000 per week, and manufacturing doesn't scale linearly. The promise seemed reckless, maybe even delusional. But something interesting happened. The public commitment created what Musk later called production hell, a period of intense focus where every system, every process, every decision got optimized around hitting that target. Teams worked around the clock, not because they were forced to, but because the public promise had made quitting harder than continuing. On June 30th, 2018, Tesla hit exactly 5,000 Model 3s in the final week. They built a tent in the parking lot to house an additional assembly line. They redesigned parts on the fly. They eliminated bottlenecks that had existed for months. The impossible became inevitable because the public commitment created a psychological force more powerful than motivation: cognitive dissonance. When your words and actions don't match, your brain experiences uncomfortable tension. Most people resolve this by changing their words, lowering expectations, making excuses, or quietly abandoning commitments. But when you make promises public and specific, changing your words becomes more painful than changing your behavior. This is the power of dissonance drive. It's not willpower or discipline. It's psychological engineering that makes follow-through feel inevitable. The invisible force that beats motivation. Most people rely on motivation to drive consistent action. They wait for inspiration, energy, or enthusiasm before starting important work. This creates a feast or famine cycle where progress happens in bursts, followed by long periods of stagnation. External commitments eliminate the internal debate that kills momentum. When you've promised to ship something by Tuesday at 10 a.m., Tuesday at 10 a.m. becomes non-negotiable. There's no decision to make, no energy to summon, no motivation to find. You simply do what you said you'd do because the alternative, breaking a public promise, feels worse than doing the work. Visibility creates healthy pressure that clarifies priorities instantly. When everything is private, everything feels equally important. When one commitment is public, it automatically becomes the priority. Your brain starts organizing resources around keeping that promise because your reputation depends on it. Consistency compounds reputation and trust in ways that sporadic excellence never can. People would rather work with someone who delivers good work reliably than someone who delivers great work unpredictably. Public commitments create the consistency that builds professional relationships and opens opportunities. The competitive advantage is immediate and obvious. Public delivery separates operators from talkers. In a world full of people who plan, discuss, and intend, the person who commits and delivers stands out dramatically. Teams rally around clear behavioral promises because they can see exactly what success looks like and when it will happen. Deadlines accelerate learning cycles by forcing decisions and revealing problems quickly. Without time pressure, you can research forever, plan endlessly, and perfect indefinitely. With a public deadline, you must ship something, get feedback, and improve based on reality rather than theory. The architecture of unbreakable promises. The secret isn't in making bigger commitments, it's in making smarter ones. Most people commit to outcomes they can't fully control, then break their promises when external factors interfere. Smart commitments focus on behaviors you can execute regardless of circumstances. Commit to inputs, not outputs. I will publish one thread every Tuesday at 10 a.m. is controllable. I will get 1,000 views on my thread depends on algorithms, timing, and audience behavior. When you commit to behaviors rather than results, you can keep promises even when outcomes disappoint. The commitment needs tight scope, clear time, and clear place. I will be more consistent is too vague to create psychological pressure. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m., I will publish one authority-building thread from my home office is specific enough to trigger dissonance when you consider skipping. The format that works best includes 4 elements: what you'll do, when you'll do it, where you'll do it, and for whom you're doing it. This specificity eliminates the wiggle room that lets you rationalize breaking promises to yourself. But the commitment alone isn't enough. You need a scoreboard that makes your progress impossible to ignore. The power of public scorekeeping. A scoreboard transforms abstract commitments into concrete accountability. It's a simple, public tracker of promises kept that creates visibility for both you and others. The format doesn't matter: a shared document, a social media update, a wall chart in your office, but the visibility does. The scoreboard needs 4 columns: date, commitment, status, and notes. This creates a historical record that shows patterns over time. You can see when you tend to miss commitments, what circumstances lead to breaks in consistency, and how your follow-through rate improves with practice. Weekly totals and streak tracking add gamification that makes consistency more engaging. Your brain likes to see numbers go up and streaks extend. A simple tally of promises kept versus promises creates immediate feedback that reinforces good behavior and highlights problems quickly. The review ritual closes the loop between commitment and learning. Every week, you spend 10 minutes analyzing your scoreboard. What worked? What didn't? What adjustments would improve your success rate? This isn't self-judgment, it's system optimization. Most importantly, at least one other person needs to see your scoreboard. The visibility creates social accountability that's more powerful than private tracking. When someone else can see your promises and your performance, breaking commitments becomes socially awkward, not just personally disappointing. The consequence design that actually works. Consequences for missed commitments need to be immediate, certain, and proportional. Most people either ignore misses entirely or create punishments so severe they avoid making commitments in the first place. The sweet spot is soft consequences that you'd rather avoid but can easily afford. A $25 donation to a charity you dislike works better than a $100 fine you can't afford. The amount isn't the motivator, the certainty is. You know that missing a commitment will definitely cost you something, so your brain starts treating the commitment as non-negotiable. The consequence must be paid within 24 hours of the miss. Delayed consequences lose their psychological power because your brain doesn't connect the pain with the behavior. Immediate consequences create a clear cause and effect relationship that shapes future decisions. Hard consequences should be reserved for chronic drift, not occasional misses. If you miss one commitment, pay the soft consequence and analyze what went wrong. If you miss 3 commitments in 2 weeks, you need a harder reset, maybe a larger donation, a public apology, or a temporary increase in commitment frequency to rebuild momentum. The key is celebrating alignment as much as analyzing misses. When you keep a commitment, especially a difficult one, acknowledge the win publicly. This positive reinforcement strengthens the behavior and makes future commitments feel more achievable. The myths that keep people stuck. The first myth is that keeping goals secret protects you from embarrassment. This backwards thinking prioritizes ego protection over result generation. Secrecy might save you from short-term social discomfort, but it guarantees long-term stagnation because there's no external pressure to follow through. The reality is that public commitments create the pressure that drives performance. Yes, you might feel embarrassed if you miss a public deadline, but that embarrassment is exactly what makes you less likely to miss the next one. The fear of social discomfort becomes a powerful motivator for consistent action. The second myth is that commitments reduce freedom by locking you into rigid schedules and behaviors. This misunderstands the relationship between constraints and creativity. Constraints don't limit freedom, they create it by eliminating the paralysis of infinite options. When you commit to publishing every Tuesday, you're not restricting your creativity, you're channeling it. Instead of debating whether to write today, you focus on what to write. The constraint removes the decision fatigue that kills momentum and redirects energy toward execution. The third myth is that missing commitments ruins your credibility permanently. This perfectionist thinking prevents people from making any commitments because they're terrified of occasional failures. The reality is that transparent postmortems build more trust than perfect performance. When you miss a commitment and immediately analyze what went wrong, adjust your system, and make a new micro-commitment, you demonstrate the kind of systematic thinking that clients and partners value. People trust builders who can diagnose problems and implement solutions more than they trust people who never seem to struggle. The 2-week commitment cycle. The optimal commitment cycle is 2 weeks, long enough to establish momentum, but short enough to maintain intensity. Longer cycles lead to procrastination and drift. Shorter cycles don't allow enough time for patterns to emerge and habits to form. Start by choosing one keystone behavior that proves your identity most directly. If you're building authority, it might be publishing thought leadership content. If you're building sales skills, it might be making prospecting calls. If you're building operational excellence, it might be completing weekly reviews. The behavior needs to be observable and schedule-bound. Write more isn't specific enough to create dissonance. Write one 500-word post every Monday at 9 a.m. is precise enough to trigger psychological pressure when you consider skipping. Make the promise public to at least one person or platform. The announcement format should include your reasoning. I'm committing to publish one authority thread every Tuesday at 10 a.m. for the next 2 weeks because consistent thought leadership is essential for building my consulting practice. The because adds psychological weight that increases compliance. Build your scoreboard immediately and update it daily. The act of logging your performance creates a feedback loop that reinforces good behavior and highlights problems before they become patterns. Add a soft consequence that you'll pay within 24 hours of any miss. This creates certainty that missing commitments has a cost, making your brain treat them as non-negotiable. At the end of 2 weeks, review your performance and decide whether to extend the same commitment, adjust the scope, or rotate to a different behavior. The key is maintaining the cycle of public commitment, visible tracking, and systematic review. The transformation timeline. The progression from inconsistent performer to reliable executor follows a predictable pattern when you use dissonance drive correctly. After one 2-week cycle with at least 4 successful commitments, you'll have proven to yourself that public promises work. This is good. You've experienced the psychological power of external accountability and built confidence in your ability to follow through. After 3 cycles with 0 misses, maintaining your scoreboard consistently, and honoring at least one soft consequence, you'll have developed the identity of someone who keeps promises. This is excellent. You've rewired your relationship with commitments from burden to advantage. After 6 months of rolling 2-week cycles, something remarkable happens. Your audience or team starts expecting your cadence. Inbound opportunities begin citing your consistency as a reason for reaching out. You've built a reputation for reliability that creates professional advantages. This is the best outcome. Your commitment system has become a competitive asset. The compound effect of reliable delivery. When you master dissonance drive, the benefits extend far beyond the specific commitments you keep. You develop confidence in your ability to follow through on any promise. You become known as someone whose word means something. You build the systematic thinking skills that improve all areas of performance. Most importantly, you stop being someone who intends and becomes someone who delivers. This identity shift changes how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself. Opportunities start flowing toward reliable performers because everyone wants to work with people they can count on. The dissonance drive gives you the psychological engine for consistent follow-through, but it doesn't solve the activation problem that stops most people from starting. The next chapter reveals a counterintuitive approach to beginning that makes procrastination nearly impossible, but only if you're willing to think smaller than you've ever thought before. Chapter 6, Tiny Starts. Stephen King has written over 60 novels and sold more than 350 million books. When people ask about his secret, they expect to hear about inspiration, talent, or some mystical creative process. Instead, King talks about something much more mundane, his daily quota of 2,000 words. But here's the part most people miss. King doesn't start by trying to write 2,000 words. He starts by writing one sentence. Not a perfect sentence, not a brilliant sentence, just one sentence that moves the story forward. That single sentence becomes the first domino that topples into the second, then the third, until 2,000 words have appeared almost without effort. King discovered something that psychologists now call the foot in the door effect. When you agree to a small initial request, you become dramatically more likely to comply with larger follow-up requests. Your brain wants to maintain consistency with its previous actions, so one small step naturally leads to the next. This isn't about motivation or willpower, it's about activation energy, the amount of effort required to begin. Most people set the activation energy so high that starting feels impossible. King set it so low that not starting feels harder than starting. This is the power of tiny starts. They transform the physics of procrastination by making the first move irresistibly easy. The hidden bottleneck that kills most projects. Most projects don't fail because of poor execution, inadequate resources, or market conditions. They fail at the moment of initiation, the gap between intention and action that feels impossibly wide when you're staring at a blank document or empty calendar. Starting is the bottleneck because it requires the most psychological energy. Once you're in motion, momentum carries you forward, but getting from 0 to 1 demands overcoming inertia, fear, perfectionism, and uncertainty all at once. This cognitive load overwhelms most people before they take the first step. 2-minute starts bypass the brain's fear circuitry entirely. When a task feels small and temporary, your amygdala doesn't trigger the fight or flight response that creates procrastination. Instead of seeing a massive, intimidating project, you see a tiny, manageable action that couldn't possibly hurt you. Early wins trigger dopamine release, not dread. Your brain rewards progress, not perfection. Each small completion creates a neurochemical hit that makes you want to continue. This positive feedback loop transforms starting from a painful necessity into an addictive habit. The throughput gains compound quickly. More sessions started means more shipped assets over time. Even if each session is short, the cumulative effect of consistent starting outperforms sporadic marathons. Short starts stack across busy days when long blocks aren't available, maintaining momentum when traditional approaches would stall. Consider the math. 5 2-minute starts per week equals 10 minutes of progress. That's 520 minutes per year, nearly 9 hours of work that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And that's assuming you stop after 2 minutes, which rarely happens once you've started. The anatomy of irresistible action. The secret isn't in the size of the action, it's in the specificity. Work on the proposal is vague enough to trigger resistance. Write the project title and 3 bullet points is concrete enough to feel manageable and clear enough to begin immediately. The first inch matters more than the first mile. You need to define the smallest possible action that counts as started for each important project. This isn't the complete first step, it's the first movement that breaks the inertia and creates momentum for everything that follows. For writing projects, the first inch might be opening the document and typing a working title. For sales activities, it might be opening your CRM and finding one prospect's contact information. For strategic planning, it might be creating a new document and writing 3 questions you need to answer. The key is choosing actions that are verb-driven and impossible to misinterpret. Open document, type title, write 3 bullet points leaves no room for confusion or delay. You either do it or you don't. There's no middle ground where you can pretend you're making progress without actually moving. Preparation amplifies the power of tiny starts. When your tools are ready, file open, template loaded, CRM bookmarked, the friction between intention and action disappears. You can go from thought to execution in seconds rather than minutes. But tiny starts alone aren't enough. You need to chain them into something that feels like progress. The chain reaction that builds momentum. The magic happens when you link 3 tiny actions into a minimum viable win. This creates enough forward movement to feel satisfying while staying small enough to feel achievable. The chain might look like: open document and write title, add 3 bullet points, expand the first bullet into a rough paragraph. Each link in the chain builds on the previous one naturally. Once you have a title, bullet points feel obvious. Once you have bullet points, expanding one feels like the logical next step. The momentum carries you forward without requiring additional willpower or decision-making. The crucial move is stopping while it's still easy. This counterintuitive approach creates what psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect, your brain's tendency to remember incomplete tasks better than completed ones. When you stop mid-flow, your subconscious continues working on the problem, making the next session easier to start and more productive. Stopping early also builds anticipation for the next session. Instead of feeling drained and reluctant to return, you feel eager to continue. This emotional state transforms your relationship with the work from avoidance to attraction. The daily start window creates consistency without rigidity. You designate a specific time slice for beginning, maybe 9 a.m. to 9:15 a.m., and use it only for starting, not completing. If you miss the window, you start at the next available cue rather than waiting until tomorrow. This approach removes the all-or-nothing thinking that kills consistency. You don't need perfect conditions or unlimited time. You just need 2 minutes and the willingness to begin. The myths that keep people stuck. The first myth is go big or go home. This all-or-nothing mentality convinces people that small actions don't matter, so they wait for large blocks of time and perfect conditions that rarely materialize. The reality is that go small, go now, go often produces more results than sporadic heroic efforts. Small actions compound into large outcomes through consistency, not intensity. Writing 1 paragraph daily for a year produces more content than writing for 8 hours once per month. Making 1 sales call daily generates more opportunities than making 20 calls once per week. The second myth is, if it's not perfect, it's not worth starting. This perfectionist thinking creates impossible standards that prevent any action at all. People wait for the perfect idea, the perfect plan, or the perfect moment, none of which exist. The reality is that starting is the only path to perfecting. You can't edit a blank page, improve a non-existent product, or refine an unwritten strategy. Imperfect action beats perfect inaction every time because action generates feedback that enables improvement. The third myth is, I need a big block of time to make real progress. This belief system makes people wait for mythical 4-hour windows of uninterrupted focus while ignoring the dozens of micro-opportunities that appear daily. The reality is that microblocks compound into substantial progress over time. 2 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 10 minutes during a break. These fragments add up to hours of productive work that wouldn't have happened otherwise. The key is recognizing that any time is enough time to start. The 2-minute revolution. The transformation begins with redefining what counts as work. Instead of measuring by hours invested or tasks completed, you measure by sessions started. This shift in metrics changes your relationship with productivity from marathon to sprint mentality. Define the 120-second start for each important project. This isn't arbitrary. 2 minutes is long enough to create momentum, but short enough to feel effortless. Write the first verb-driven task you can't wriggle out of, something so simple that refusing feels harder than complying. For content creation, open document, write working title, list 3 main points. For business development, open CRM, find 1 warm prospect, draft subject line for follow-up email. For strategic planning, create new document, write project goal, list 3 key questions to answer. Prepare your tools in advance to eliminate setup friction. Pre-open files the night before. Pin templates to your desktop. Bookmark frequently used websites. Create shortcuts that reduce the time between intention and action to near zero. Chain your tiny start to a mini win by linking 3 small actions together. The first action breaks inertia, the second builds momentum, the third creates a sense of progress. This sequence transforms starting from a painful necessity into a satisfying routine. Log each win immediately to reinforce the behavior. Keep a simple tally of sessions started, not hours worked or tasks completed. This metric focuses your attention on the behavior that drives all other results, beginning. Stop while it's still easy to create hunger for the next session. This requires discipline because momentum makes you want to continue. But stopping early ensures that tomorrow's start feels appealing, rather than daunting. The advanced techniques that accelerate progress. Pre-committing the first line creates a bridge between sessions. Before you stop working, write the opening sentence or phrase for your next session. This breadcrumb eliminates the blank page problem and gives you an instant entry point when you return. Using timers reduces overwhelm by creating artificial constraints. Set a 5-minute timer for your tiny start. The time pressure makes you focus on action rather than perfection, and the short duration makes the commitment feel manageable. Verbing your tasks eliminates ambiguity and speeds execution. Draft 3 bullets is clearer than work on outline. Call 5 prospects is more actionable than do sales activities. Write opening paragraph beats start chapter. Verbs create clarity, nouns create confusion. The daily start window becomes your non-negotiable appointment with progress. Choose a 15-minute window when you're most alert and least likely to be interrupted. Use this time only for starting, not for completing entire projects. If you miss your designated window, start at the next available cue rather than waiting until tomorrow. This prevents the perfectionist trap of all-or-nothing thinking that turns one missed session into a week-long break. The transformation timeline. The progression from chronic procrastinator to consistent starter follows a predictable pattern when you apply tiny starts correctly. After 1 week of completing 5 tiny starts, you'll have proven that the system works and built confidence in your ability to begin consistently. You'll also have 2 shipped mini-wins that demonstrate progress. This is good. You've broken the cycle of intention without action. After 1 month of 10 or more tiny starts per week, 5 mini-wins, and 1 substantial shipment, you'll have developed the identity of someone who starts things. The behavior will start feeling automatic rather than forced. This is excellent. You've rewired your relationship with beginning. After 3 months of consistent tiny starts, something remarkable happens. You develop what I call the start reflex, the ability to begin within 60 seconds of recognizing an opportunity or obligation. Your shipping cadence doubles because you're no longer losing days to activation energy. This is the best outcome. Starting has become your default response to any important work. The compound effect of consistent beginning. When you master tiny starts, the benefits extend far beyond individual projects. You develop confidence in your ability to tackle any challenge because you know you can always take the first step. You become known as someone who follows through on ideas rather than just talking about them. You build momentum that carries over into all areas of your life. Most importantly, you stop being someone who waits for perfect conditions and become someone who creates progress regardless of circumstances. This identity shift transforms how you approach opportunities, challenges, and goals. The tiny start gives you the ability to begin anything, but it doesn't solve the consistency problem that derails most improvement efforts. The next chapter reveals a psychological mechanism that makes good behaviors feel automatic and bad behaviors feel awkward, but only if you're willing to surrender control in a very specific way. Chapter 7. Action Triggers. Michael Phelps won 23 Olympic gold medals, but his secret weapon wasn't his wingspan or lung capacity. It was something he called the videotape, a precise sequence of mental and physical cues that triggered peak performance regardless of external conditions. Every night before a race, Phelps would lie in bed and mentally rehearse his entire race routine. He'd visualize walking to the blocks, adjusting his goggles, hearing the starting signal, and executing each stroke perfectly. But here's the crucial part. He didn't just visualize the perfect race. He visualized what he'd do if his goggles filled with water, if he lost count of his laps, or if he false started. This mental rehearsal created what psychologists call implementation intentions, preloaded decisions that fire automatically when specific conditions are met. When Phelps' goggles actually did fill with water during the 2008 Beijing Olympics 2,000-meter butterfly final, he didn't panic or improvise. His videotape kicked in, and he swam the race by stroke count, winning gold and setting a world record while essentially swimming blind. The videotape worked because it transformed conscious decisions into unconscious responses. Instead of having to think about what to do in high-pressure moments, Phelps had already decided. The cue triggered the behavior automatically, preserving his mental energy for execution rather than decision-making. This is the power of action triggers. They turn intentions into inevitabilities by removing the gap between stimulus and response. The missing link between intention and action. Most people have excellent intentions. They want to write more, exercise regularly, follow up with prospects, and complete weekly reviews. But intentions without triggers are just wishes floating in mental space, disconnected from the rhythms of daily life. Without a cue, plans remain abstract. You intend to write daily, but daily never arrives because it's not connected to any specific moment or event. You plan to follow up with prospects, but follow-up stays on your mental to-do list because there's no trigger that makes it happen automatically. With a cue, action fires like muscle memory. When you connect a desired behavior to a specific environmental trigger, the behavior becomes as automatic as checking your phone when it buzzes or looking both ways before crossing a street. The cue eliminates the decision-making step that usually creates delay and resistance. Triggers rescue stalled days when motivation disappears and energy crashes. On high-energy days, you can rely on enthusiasm to drive action. But on low-energy days, which happen to everyone, triggers become the difference between maintaining momentum and losing weeks to inconsistency. The stress-proof execution advantage becomes crucial during challenging periods. Pre-decisions outperform in chaos because they eliminate the cognitive load of figuring out what to do next. When your environment is unpredictable, your triggers provide stability and continuity. Triggers protect your standards when energy dips below normal levels. Instead of abandoning your commitments when you feel tired, overwhelmed, or distracted, you rely on the automatic responses you've programmed during high-energy periods. This consistency during difficult times builds the reputation and results that separate professionals from amateurs. The architecture of automatic behavior. The foundation of effective triggers is a comprehensive cue inventory, a map of the stable events that happen in your daily routine. These aren't the big, obvious moments like morning or evening, but the specific, concrete events that occur predictably. Sitting at your desk, closing your laptop, ending a phone call, opening your email client. The key is identifying cues you already experience rather than trying to create new ones. Your brain is already wired to notice these events, so you're leveraging existing neural pathways rather than building new ones from scratch. This makes the triggers feel natural and sustainable rather than forced and artificial. Physical events work better than time-based cues because they're more reliable and specific. When I sit at my desk is more concrete than at 9 a.m. because desk sitting happens regardless of schedule changes, while 9 a.m. might be occupied by an unexpected meeting or emergency. The optimal number is 5 to 7 daily cues, enough to create multiple opportunities for important behaviors, but not so many that you feel overwhelmed by constant triggers. Each cue should connect to a behavior that moves your most important projects forward. The if-then script format creates the psychological link between cue and behavior. If I sit at my desk, then I draft 3 bullet points for today's content. If a meeting ends, then I immediately log 2 follow-up actions in my CRM. If my calendar chimes at 3 p.m., then I publish 1 social media post. The specificity matters enormously. Vague scripts like, if it's afternoon, then I'll do some writing, don't create strong enough associations to trigger automatic behavior. Precise scripts like, if I close my laptop at 6 p.m., then I write tomorrow's 3 priorities on a sticky note, create clear, actionable connections. The recovery system that prevents collapse. Even the best trigger systems occasionally fail. You miss a cue, skip a behavior, or get interrupted mid-action. Without a recovery mechanism, these small failures compound into complete system breakdown. The solution is building recovery directly into your trigger architecture. The recovery rule is simple. If any planned trigger fails, then I immediately do one minimum viable action related to that behavior. This prevents perfectionist thinking from turning one missed trigger into a week-long abandonment of the entire system. The recovery action needs to be smaller than the original behavior, but related to the same outcome. If you miss your draft 3 bullet points trigger, the recovery might be write 1 working title. If you skip your log 2 follow-ups trigger, the recovery might be open CRM and review 1 prospect. The timing of recovery matters as much as the action itself. The rule activates within 10 minutes of recognizing the miss, not at the end of the day or the next morning. This immediate response prevents the psychological distance that makes recovery feel optional rather than essential. Recovery actions serve a dual purpose. They maintain momentum toward your goals and reinforce the identity of someone who doesn't abandon systems when they encounter friction. This identity reinforcement becomes crucial for long-term consistency. The weekly optimization ritual. Triggers aren't set-and-forget systems. They require regular tuning to maintain effectiveness and adapt to changing circumstances. The weekly review process takes 15 minutes and focuses on 3 simple questions: which triggers fired consistently, which ones failed repeatedly, and which behaviors need new triggers. Track hits and misses without judgment or elaborate analysis. A simple tally shows patterns more clearly than complex scoring systems. If a trigger fired 4 out of 7 days, that's useful data. If it fired 0 out of 7 days, that's also useful data. It tells you the trigger needs adjustment or replacement. Rewrite the worst performing trigger each week. Don't try to fix multiple triggers simultaneously. Focus on the one that's causing the most friction. Often, the fix is simple: making the cue more specific, shrinking the behavior, or adjusting the timing. Celebrate the best performing trigger to reinforce what's working. Positive reinforcement strengthens neural pathways and makes you more likely to maintain effective triggers over time. Recognition doesn't need to be elaborate. Simply noting the desk sit trigger worked perfectly this week provides the psychological reward that sustains behavior. The review also identifies opportunities for new triggers. As your existing triggers become automatic, you can layer additional behaviors onto different cues, gradually building a comprehensive system that runs your most important activities on autopilot. The common myths that sabotage success. The first myth is, I just need more discipline. This willpower-focused thinking assumes that consistent behavior requires constant, conscious effort. The reality is that systems beat sheer will every time because they reduce the number of decisions you need to make and preserve mental energy for higher-level thinking. Discipline is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day. Triggers are renewable resources that actually strengthen with use. The more often a trigger fires, the more automatic the response becomes, requiring less conscious effort over time rather than more. The second myth is, I'll remember to do it. This overconfidence in memory ignores the reality of cognitive load and competing priorities. Your brain is designed to forget routine tasks in favor of novel or urgent ones. Memory fails predictably, cues don't. Even people with excellent memories benefit from trigger systems because triggers eliminate the mental overhead of remembering. Instead of using cognitive resources to recall what you should be doing, you can focus those resources on executing the behavior effectively. The third myth is, triggers are too rigid and will make me feel robotic. This flexibility concern misunderstands how trigger systems actually work. Triggers don't eliminate choice. They eliminate the friction that prevents good choices from happening consistently. You can revise triggers weekly based on what you learn about your patterns and preferences. The system adapts to your life rather than forcing your life to adapt to the system. This flexibility ensures that triggers remain helpful rather than burdensome over time. The 5-trigger foundation. Building an effective trigger system starts with identifying 5 cues you encounter most days. These become the foundation for automating your most important behaviors. The morning desk sit might trigger content creation. The end of meetings might trigger follow-up actions. The 3 p.m. calendar chime might trigger social media posting. The laptop closure might trigger next day planning. The evening phone charge might trigger reflection or learning. Each trigger connects to a single, specific behavior rather than a laundry list of actions. If I sit at my desk, then I draft 3 bullet points, works better than if I sit at my desk, then I check email, review my calendar, draft content, and plan my day. Multiple behaviors attached to one cue create decision fatigue and reduce the likelihood that any behavior will happen consistently. The behaviors should be small enough to complete, regardless of energy level, but meaningful enough to create progress toward important goals. 3 bullet points moves content creation forward. 2 logged follow-ups advances business development. 1 published post builds authority. These actions compound into significant results over time. Visible prompts reinforce the triggers during the learning phase. Sticky notes, calendar reminders, or desktop notifications can help establish the cue behavior connection until it becomes automatic. Once the trigger is established, you can remove the external prompts and rely on the internal association. The recovery rule applies to all triggers equally. If any trigger fails, immediately do 1 minimum viable action related to that behavior. This universal recovery mechanism prevents isolated failures from cascading into system-wide breakdowns. The transformation timeline. The progression from intention-dependent to trigger-driven behavior follows a predictable pattern when implemented correctly. After 1 week of consistent trigger implementation, you'll have 3 functioning triggers that fire at least 4 days out of 7. This is good. You've proven that the system works and begun building automatic responses to daily cues. After 1 month of trigger refinement, you'll have 5 or more reliable triggers and will have used your recovery rule within 10 minutes of recognizing a miss. This is excellent. You've developed the identity of someone who maintains systems even when they encounter friction. After 3 months of trigger optimization, something remarkable happens. Triggers begin running your day automatically. Your standards hold even during low-energy periods. Your output increases by at least 25% because you're no longer losing time to decision fatigue and activation energy. This is the best outcome. You've achieved stress-proof execution that works regardless of external conditions. The compound effect of automatic excellence. When you master action triggers, the benefits extend far beyond the specific behaviors you automate. You develop confidence in your ability to maintain consistency regardless of circumstances. You become known as someone who delivers predictably rather than sporadically. You free up mental energy for strategic thinking and creative work. Most importantly, you stop being someone who depends on motivation and become someone who operates from systems. This identity shift transforms how you approach challenges, opportunities, and goals. You start thinking in terms of triggers and automation rather than willpower and effort. The trigger system gives you automatic execution of important behaviors, but it doesn't address the environmental factors that can sabotage even the best intentions. The next chapter reveals how to engineer your surroundings so that good choices become inevitable and bad choices become nearly impossible, but only if you're willing to admit that your environment is currently designed for failure. Chapter 8. Design Defaults. Barack Obama wore the same style of suit every day for 8 years. Gray or blue, no exceptions. When asked about this seemingly trivial choice, he revealed something profound. I'm trying to pare down decisions. I don't want to make decisions about what I'm eating or wearing, because I have too many other decisions to make. Obama understood something that most people miss. Every decision, no matter how small, depletes the same mental resource you need for important choices. By eliminating trivial decisions through environmental design, he preserved cognitive bandwidth for presidential-level problems. But Obama's wardrobe was just the visible tip of a much larger system. His entire environment was engineered to make good choices automatic and bad choices difficult. His schedule was structured to protect deep work time. His briefing materials were formatted to accelerate decision-making. His physical workspace was optimized to reduce friction between intention and action. This wasn't about willpower or discipline. It was about choice architecture. Obama designed his environment so that the right decisions became the path of least resistance. This is the power of design defaults. When you engineer your surroundings correctly, good behavior happens automatically, while bad behavior requires conscious effort to override the system. The hidden force that shapes every choice. Most people believe they make decisions through rational analysis and conscious choice. They think willpower and motivation drive their behavior. This is a comforting illusion that ignores the reality of how human psychology actually works. Environment beats willpower every time because friction determines frequency. When good behaviors require multiple steps, logins, searches, and setups, they happen rarely. When bad behaviors are immediately available with zero friction, they happen constantly. The path of least resistance wins, regardless of your intentions. Friction-light paths get used automatically. When your most important work is one click away, you do it more often. When your biggest distractions require multiple steps to access, you avoid them naturally. This isn't about self-control, it's about physics. Energy flows toward the easiest outlet. Design once, benefit daily. Unlike motivation-based approaches that require constant conscious effort, environmental design creates compound returns. 1 hour spent optimizing your workspace pays dividends every day for months. 1 evening spent organizing your digital tools eliminates friction permanently. Less decision fatigue means more shipping. When your environment eliminates micro-choices about where to find files, which template to use, or how to start a project, you preserve mental energy for the creative and strategic work that actually matters. The cognitive load reduction is immediate and measurable. The team's signaling advantage becomes crucial for leaders. Clean defaults set cultural expectations without requiring constant management. When shared tools have smart defaults and visible dashboards, team behavior aligns naturally. Dashboards drive behavior more effectively than nagging because they make performance visible without creating personal conflict. The subtraction strategy that multiplies results. The transformation begins with a comprehensive friction audit, a systematic examination of the steps between intention and execution in your most important workflows. Most people have never mapped these steps, which explains why their good intentions rarely translate into consistent action. Start by listing your 3 most important workflows. Content creation, business development, and strategic planning are common examples. For each workflow, document every single step from initial intention to final delivery. Open laptop, find file, remember password, locate template, clear desktop, close distracting tabs, find research notes, remember where you stopped yesterday. The friction points become obvious when you see them written down. 7 steps to start writing, 12 clicks to begin prospecting, 5 different apps to complete a weekly review. Each additional step reduces the likelihood that you'll begin and dramatically increases the chance you'll quit mid-process. Circle the stickiest steps, the ones that consistently slow you down or create resistance. These are your highest leverage improvement opportunities. Removing one major friction point often eliminates multiple smaller ones downstream. The key is attacking one friction point per week rather than trying to optimize everything simultaneously. Small changes compound into dramatic improvements when applied consistently. Removing one login saves 30 seconds daily, which equals 3 hours annually. Eliminating one search saves 2 minutes daily, which equals 12 hours annually. Pre-opening tomorrow's files the night before eliminates the startup friction that kills momentum. When you sit down to work, everything is ready. No searching, no loading, no decision-making about where to begin. You can move from intention to execution in seconds rather than minutes. Placing physical start tokens on your keyboard creates unavoidable cues for important behaviors. An index card with tomorrow's 3 priorities, a notebook open to the right page, or a printed template positioned prominently. These physical reminders eliminate the "what should I do first" question that creates delay. The art of strategic friction addition. While you're removing friction from desired behaviors, you need to add friction to undesired ones. This isn't about eliminating temptations entirely, it's about making them require conscious choice rather than unconscious habit. Out of sight equals out of mind for most distractions. Moving your phone to another room doesn't eliminate the option to check it, but it does eliminate the unconscious reaching that happens dozens of times daily. The extra steps required to access the distraction create a pause where conscious choice can intervene. App blockers and timers create temporal friction that protects focused work time. You can still access social media or news sites, but only during designated windows. This approach maintains autonomy while creating natural boundaries around deep work periods. Limited windows for low-value activities work better than complete elimination because they feel sustainable rather than punitive. Checking email twice daily at designated times eliminates the constant interruption while maintaining necessary communication. Social media access only after completing daily priorities ensures that entertainment doesn't crowd out important work. The goal isn't to become a productivity robot. It's to make conscious choices about how you spend attention rather than defaulting to whatever demands it most loudly. The default settings that run your life. Most people accept the default settings in their tools and environments without realizing these defaults were designed by someone else for someone else's priorities. Reclaiming control over defaults is one of the highest leverage changes you can make. Auto templates for common outputs eliminate the blank page problem that stops most creative work. Email templates for frequent communications, document templates for regular reports, and project templates for recurring workflows. These pre-built structures provide starting points that accelerate execution. Default calendar blocks for deep work protect your most valuable time from meeting creep and reactive scheduling. When your calendar shows deep work content creation from 9 to 11 a.m. daily, people schedule around it rather than through it. The default assumption becomes that this time is unavailable rather than available. Default notification settings should be off for everything except true emergencies. Most people have notifications enabled for dozens of apps, creating a constant stream of interruptions that fragment attention and destroy flow states. Whitelisting only essential notifications creates space for sustained focus. The power of defaults extends to shared tools and team environments. When project management tools default to clear naming conventions, consistent status updates, and visible progress tracking, team behavior aligns without requiring constant management. The system nudges people toward good practices rather than relying on individual discipline. The social architecture of high performance. Individual environmental design is powerful, but social environmental design is transformative. When you create shared systems that make good behavior visible and easy, entire teams begin performing at higher levels. Shared dashboards of shipped items create positive peer pressure without creating shame or competition. When everyone can see who's shipping what and when, consistency becomes a social norm rather than an individual struggle. The visibility motivates without requiring management intervention. Simple status systems in shared tools eliminate the communication overhead that slows most teams. When project status is visible at a glance, green for on track, yellow for at risk, red for blocked, coordination happens naturally. People can see where help is needed and offer support proactively. Weekly win rounds, where team members share recent accomplishments, reinforce the behaviors you want to see more of. This isn't about competition, it's about celebration and pattern recognition. When people hear about successful approaches, they naturally adopt similar strategies. The key is making these social systems optional rather than mandatory. Forced participation creates resistance, while voluntary participation creates engagement. People join because they see the value, not because they're required to comply. The common traps that sabotage systems. The first trap is over-engineering. People get excited about environmental design and try to optimize everything simultaneously. They install dozens of apps, create complex workflows, and build elaborate systems that require more maintenance than the original problems. The fix is reverting to one subtraction per week and deleting non-essential tools. Simplicity scales better than complexity because simple systems require less cognitive overhead to maintain. The best environmental design is invisible. It works without requiring conscious attention. The second trap is system decay. Environmental optimizations naturally degrade over time as new tools are added, files accumulate, and workflows evolve. Without regular maintenance, even the best designed environment becomes cluttered and inefficient. The fix is scheduling a monthly reset day to prune unnecessary files, update templates, and re-nudge your environment toward optimal configuration. This isn't about perfection, it's about preventing entropy from undermining your systems. The third trap is social backfire. Well-intentioned team systems can create pressure, competition, or resentment if implemented poorly. Leaderboards that shame poor performers or dashboards that feel like surveillance can destroy the collaborative culture they're meant to support. The fix is making participation optional and celebrating progress rather than rankings. The goal is creating visibility and support, not competition and judgment. When people feel helped rather than monitored, they engage willingly with shared systems. The transformation timeline. Environmental design results follow a predictable progression when implemented systematically. After 1 week of friction reduction, you'll have made one workflow significantly smoother and noticed fewer stalls in your daily routine. This is good. You've proven that environmental changes create behavioral changes without requiring willpower. After 1 month of consistent optimization, your morning ramp-up time will be cut by at least 50%, and your shipping cadence will increase noticeably. This is excellent. You've created momentum that compounds daily. After 3 months of systematic environmental design, something remarkable happens. Desired behaviors begin happening automatically, while distractions start feeling expensive in terms of time and effort required. You've achieved what I call life by default. Your environment runs your priorities without conscious management. The compound effect of intelligent design. When you master environmental design, the benefits extend far beyond individual productivity. You develop the systems thinking that improves all areas of life. You become known as someone who creates smooth, efficient processes. You build the environmental intelligence that accelerates every future project. Most importantly, you stop fighting your environment and start leveraging it. This shift from resistance to alignment transforms how you approach challenges and opportunities. You start thinking in terms of design and systems rather than effort and willpower. The environmental design gives you automatic execution and reduced friction, but it doesn't address the long-term sustainability question that determines whether your changes last or fade. The next chapter reveals the final piece of the transformation puzzle, a principle so powerful it can turn temporary improvements into permanent identity shifts, but only if you understand the deeper psychology of becoming. Chapter 9. Keep Becoming. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job in Baltimore. The news director told her she was unfit for television news and too emotionally invested in her stories. Most people would have seen this as a career-ending failure. Oprah saw it as data about who she was becoming. Instead of trying to fit the traditional news anchor mold, she leaned into what made her different: genuine curiosity about people's stories and an ability to create emotional connection through conversation. She didn't change her personality to match the job. She found work that matched her identity. This decision launched a 40-year career built on one simple principle: consistent action aligned with authentic identity creates compound results that seem impossible from the outside. Every show, every interview, every business decision reinforced the same core identity. I am someone who helps people live their best lives through authentic conversation and shared wisdom. The result wasn't just professional success, it was cultural influence that spanned decades and opened opportunities that didn't exist when she started. Book clubs that moved markets, political endorsements that shifted elections, a media empire built on the foundation of kept promises and consistent delivery. Oprah understood something that most people miss. Becoming isn't a destination, it's a process. And when you align that process with systems that compound, extraordinary results become inevitable. The 8-pillar foundation you've built. Over the past 8 chapters, you've constructed a comprehensive system for transformation that works regardless of your starting point, personality type, or circumstances. Each pillar reinforces the others, creating a structure that becomes stronger with use rather than weaker. Act, then feel reversed the motivation equation that keeps most people stuck. You learn that action teaches belief, not the other way around. Motivation follows movement, confidence follows competence, and clarity follows commitment. This foundational shift eliminates the waiting that kills most improvement efforts. Identity first gave you the behavioral compass that guides every decision. You discovered how to name who you're becoming and back it with visible standards that create consistency without requiring constant willpower. Your identity became your operating system, not your aspiration. Future Filter transformed vague goals into precise decision-making criteria. You built a vivid avatar of who you'll be 12 months from now and learned to make choices that protect that person's assets, reputation, time, capital, relationships. Present bias lost its grip when future, you became real. Gap to plan converted shame into strategy by mapping the distance between ideal and actual behavior. You learn to attack one discrepancy at a time with measurable levers, turning the discomfort of self-awareness into the fuel for systematic improvement. Commit publicly leveraged cognitive dissonance to make quitting harder than continuing. You discovered how to design smart promises, visible scoreboards, and soft consequences that align behavior with stated intentions even when motivation disappears. Start Tiny eliminated the activation energy that kills most projects before they begin. You mastered the art of 2-minute beginnings that naturally lead to substantial completions, making procrastination nearly impossible and momentum nearly inevitable. Trigger Autopilot removed the decision fatigue that exhausts mental resources. You built if-then plans that fire automatically when daily cues appear, preserving willpower for creative and strategic work while ensuring important behaviors happen consistently. Design defaults made good choices easy and bad choices hard through environmental engineering. You learned to subtract friction from desired behaviors and add friction to distractions, creating an environment that nudges you toward success without requiring conscious effort. The transformation you can now claim. The integration of these 8 pillars creates capabilities that seemed impossible when you started reading. You can now make faster, calmer decisions because your standards reduce noise and your identity provides clarity. The endless internal debate about what to do next has been replaced by systematic execution of predetermined priorities. You can now generate predictable output because you trust yourself to keep promises. The feast or famine cycle of sporadic productivity has been replaced by consistent delivery that builds reputation and creates opportunities. People know what to expect from you because you know what to expect from yourself. You can now operate with leverage and freedom because systems carry the cognitive load that used to exhaust you. Instead of managing every detail through conscious effort, you think several moves ahead while your environment and triggers handle routine execution. Mental energy flows towards strategy and creativity rather than basic task management. Your relationships improve automatically because reliability becomes your signature strength. People trust those who do what they say, and you've built the infrastructure to keep promises consistently. Clean boundaries protect your time and attention, while clear commitments reduce friction in collaboration. You can now ship consistently without burnout because your systems are sustainable rather than heroic. Weekly public deliverables become routine rather than exceptional. The stress of constant deadline pressure disappears when your environment and triggers ensure steady progress. You can now pivot confidently when circumstances change because your identity and decision tests guide smart adjustments. Instead of abandoning everything when one approach doesn't work, You adapt systematically while maintaining core standards and long-term direction. You can now capture upside opportunities because you're placing more bets and completing more learning cycles. The paralysis of perfectionism has been replaced by the momentum of consistent experimentation. You ship, learn, adjust, and ship again, creating the feedback loops that accelerate growth. The compound effect that changes everything. The real magic happens when these systems run long enough to create compound returns. Your baseline performance rises quarter after quarter because habits and environment reduce the setup time for important work. What used to require significant conscious effort now happens automatically. Your reputation compounds because each kept promise buys future trust. Clients, partners, and team members start betting on you more readily because your track record demonstrates reliability. Opportunities flow toward consistent performers because everyone wants to work with people they can count on. The flywheel momentum becomes self-reinforcing. Identity drives action. Action creates proof. Proof strengthens identity. This cycle accelerates over time, making consistency feel effortless rather than forced. You stop being someone who tries to be disciplined and become someone who is disciplined by design. The transformation extends beyond professional results into personal satisfaction. You develop quiet confidence that comes from keeping promises to yourself. You experience the freedom that comes from systems that work without constant management. You enjoy the clarity that comes from knowing exactly who you are and where you're going. Most importantly, you become someone who creates rather than consumes change. Instead of waiting for external circumstances to improve your situation, you systematically engineer the conditions that produce the results you want. This shift from reactive to proactive fundamentally changes how you approach every challenge and opportunity. The Oprah Principle in action. Oprah's success wasn't built on talent alone. It was built on the systematic application of identity-based behavior change over decades. She defined who she was early and consistently acted in alignment with that identity across every platform and opportunity. Her service-driven identity remained constant while her methods evolved. Radio, television, magazines, books, digital media, each new platform became another way to express the same core identity. This consistency across channels created trust that transcended any single medium or format. The compound effect became visible over time. Early consistency in small markets built credibility for larger opportunities. Reliable delivery in television created trust for business ventures. Authentic connection with audiences generated influence that extended far beyond entertainment. The result was multi-decade relevance in an industry known for brief careers. While others chased trends or tried to reinvent themselves constantly, Oprah deepened her expression of a consistent identity. This approach created sustainable success that survived industry changes, economic downturns, and cultural shifts. Her example demonstrates the ultimate payoff of the system you've learned. When identity, actions, and environment align consistently over time, the results exceed what seems possible from any individual effort. The compound effect of systematic becoming creates opportunities that don't exist for sporadic performers. Your next 4 minutes. The gap between knowing and doing is where most transformation efforts die. You now have a complete system for sustainable change, but systems only work when they're implemented. The next 4 minutes determine whether this book becomes useful knowledge or actionable transformation. Write your one-line identity statement right now. Use the template. I am a role who observable behavior, every cadence. Make it specific enough that a camera could verify it and meaningful enough that it excites you. This single sentence becomes your behavioral North Star for everything that follows. Choose today's minimum viable action and do it immediately. Title plus 3 bullet points for your next piece of content. 1 prospecting call to a warm lead. 1 social media post that demonstrates your expertise. The specific action matters less than the immediate execution. You're proving to yourself that you're someone who acts on good ideas rather than just collecting them. Make 1 public micro-commitment with a 48-hour deadline. Post it somewhere others can see. social media, a shared document, a message to one person. The visibility creates the accountability pressure that transforms intention into execution. The short deadline prevents procrastination from taking root. These 4 minutes of action create more momentum than hours of additional reading or planning. You're not just learning about transformation, you're experiencing it in real time. The becoming that never ends. The most successful people understand that becoming is a process, not a destination. There's no finish line where you stop growing, improving, or adapting. The goal isn't to reach some perfect state. It's to build systems that make continuous improvement feel natural and sustainable. Don't wait for brave. Courage isn't a prerequisite for action, it's a byproduct of action. Start small, start messy, start now. Perfect conditions don't exist, perfect timing never arrives, and perfect plans guarantee perfect procrastination. Imperfect action beats perfect inaction every time. Standards over moods becomes your operational philosophy. You do what you said you'd do regardless of how you feel, because your identity depends on kept promises, not positive emotions. Motivation is unreliable. Standards are unbreakable. You're one kept promise away from momentum, one completed commitment away from increased self-trust, one shipped deliverable away from enhanced reputation, one systematic improvement away from compound results. The next action you take matters more than all the actions you've avoided. The path forward is clear. Do the first inch today. Write the identity line. Choose the MVA. Make the micro commitment. Ship something small but real. The rest will follow because systems create momentum, momentum creates results, and results create the identity that makes everything else inevitable. You came to this book wanting to stop wishing and start doing. You now have the complete system for making that transformation permanent. The only question remaining is whether you'll use it. The choice is yours. The time is now. The person you're becoming is waiting. Keep becoming.